So one of the best parts of being an artist or a craftivist full-time is that I can literally follow whatever my brain wants to do. Now, is that dangerous when you have a neurodivergent brain? 100% it is, but it's been really fun. So right now I have a ton of projects going on. I'm actually cutting squares or cutting my quilt pieces for a quilt along that I'm doing for the Positively Vengeful quilt, and I'll tag Brickell down below so you can go follow her on Instagram and check out this amazing fundraiser she put together. So I've been cutting out a ton of squares for this quilt. I've also been making a lot of quilted art for my upcoming market in October. So here is an example of some of those pieces that I've been working on. There's just something about quilting that allows me to be technical and creative at the same time, and there's just endless possibilities. And so yeah, my brain has just been all over the place with projects. So today what I wanted to do was actually a project that I can finish and share with all of you. And when I've done videos like this in the past, they've been received pretty well from you. So if you like videos like this, don't forget to let me know in the comments, and then like and subscribe. So today, my friends, we are going to be making this pattern right here from 1988. 1988, yes. We are not going to follow it exactly. It's more of a inspiration, I would say, but I love a good crop boxy top. Like that's my favorite aesthetic. And this 80s style, you know, I was really drawn to this. I actually picked up this pattern for a quarter, 25 cents at Art Salvage here in Spokane. And I also got the fabric, I think, at the same time for a very good price that I'm going to use. I'll show you in a second. But what I really like about this pattern is, again, it's that boxy style, it's cropped, and it also has buttons down the back. You can't really see in this picture. It's meant to be a dress with a top like over it. We're not doing a dress. Okay, we're not going to do that. But anyway, I figured I would bring you along for the journey today and see what happens. Now, the first thing to keep in mind when you're looking for vintage patterns, number one, size does kind of matter. So patterns in general, if you're going to pick those up while you're out shopping secondhand or thrifting online, you do need to make sure that you are looking at this little size piece up here, because these sizes, especially in the US, do not coincide with the sizes that you would typically wear. So I think that I actually wear a 12, but you can actually see at the top. Okay, so you'll have a grid on your pattern, and the grid will tell you your sizing. So this is really important to take a look at. So in this case, size 12, the bust measurement is 34, waist is 26.5, and the hip is 36. So that's what I'm looking at. Since it's a top, I'm mostly concerned with the bust area and then the hip area, because I do want to make sure that it has that shape. So I am looking for a size 12. Now this, you'll see, 8, 10, 12. So there's going to be 3 different sizes in this pattern. So that's the first thing you want to look at with vintage patterns, just to make sure that you have the correct size. Second, you need to open them up and take a look. A lot of donated patterns have already been cut and used for a project in the past. So you do want to make sure that they are either fully intact, like this one is pretty brand new, or if you open it up and look at what size they did cut. So we have the right size, we have a fully intact pattern. Now, the next thing you need to concern yourself with is how much fabric and what type of fabric you are going to be using. So in this case, you do want to read. It gives you some information. It's a loose-fitting waist-length top with mock bands, drop shoulders, shoulder pads, which we are omitting, back button closure, and above elbow sleeves with cuffs. Okay, that's the description of the top portion. Then it says notions. So for your notions, this is what you need to complete the top. So just by looking at this and reading the description, I know I'm going to need buttons. If there's a button back, you need some buttons. And this, it says, let's see, for the top, we need 1/2 inch of covered raglan shoulder pads and 4 5/8 inch buttons. Again, we're omitting the shoulder pads, and I have a huge collection of buttons, so we'll make it work. Even though it says 5/8 of an inch, how am I saying that? 5/8 inches buttons. It's really aesthetics, because when you place it on your item, you could do more buttons or less buttons. You could do ties. You can absolutely alter these patterns to fit whatever your vibe is. Again, as you read further down, it does say for the top, it also suggests stable knits. Okay, so that's what it's saying. And then it says Oxford cloth, lightweight linen, lightweight broadcloth, and chambray. Beautiful. That's exactly what I planned on using, is like a cotton. You don't, when it says lightweight, that's specifically because if it's too heavy, it's just going to be stiff and it's going to, you know, not fit the way you might want it to. So this is why it's saying lightweight. We want something a little bit lighter. And that's it. So that's really all we need to know to get started on this pattern. You got to pick out your fabric, of course. So at Art Salvage recently, they also had a fabric sale, and it was $4 a pound for all of this fabric. I got a lot of really great stuff that I cannot wait to use, but I think for this project, I think I'm going to use it. Yes. I love this, and this is a cotton. It's a little stiffer than, say, like a lightweight, but it has no stretch to it, which again, I like. I like the pattern, and I think we have enough to make our little top. So that is going to be the plan for our little box top. If I don't have enough, I do have a backup. Actually, it's me. I have a bunch of backups. But the other, let me show you one more fabric. Let me just show you this fabric I got. It's a curtain. I don't know what I'm going to use it for. I thought about making this top because it is cotton, it is black and white, it has been washed. Look at it. It's amazing. We have owls, porcupines, bears. Like, it's so just whimsical. I love it so much. And I don't quite know what I'm going to use it for, but this I actually did not get at Art Salvage. This I found at the thrift store when I went this weekend. I had a coupon, so I think I paid $3 for this entire curtain, and then when I got home, washed it so it was ready to go. So we have our pattern, we have our fabric, the notions we'll figure out when we get there, and the next thing that's probably the most tedious part of this whole process is cutting out the pattern. Before you cut out a pattern, I also recommend reading through the instructions. It can be a little overwhelming if you're not used to looking at patterns. They tend to throw a lot of information at you. Also, there are things that they have in here to make your life easier. This is from 1988. There's been a lot of improvements. We've made changes in the way that we construct garments for ease of use. Some of those classic techniques, though, really can be beneficial to garment construction. So don't discount all of the information that they have. This is why taking a few sewing classes and getting to know your sewing machine and what those techniques are and what they do for your fit is so important. And you can do this on YouTube, right? You can watch videos. There are really great sewist teachers out there that, you know, you can learn so much information from. In fact, one video I recently watched was Evelyn Wood. I love Evelyn Wood. She used to create vintage garments using vintage techniques, and she has like a sewing school, but she does a lot of great videos. And you know, I have a soft spot for vintage anyway. And the video that I watched this weekend was her sharing some of her vintage techniques that she incorporates into modern clothing to give it really professional finish. So that's such a great video. And those are the type of things you want to just constantly keep educating yourself on to make your garment construction even better. So reading through this, again, there's a lot of information. Your pattern layouts. So these are really great most of the time because it will explain to you how to lay them out on your fabric to get the most out of your pattern pieces. So with a lot of these, you know, patterns, you're going to have a lot of waste though, because, you know, you're cutting out right in the center, or if you're trying to match patterns, you just end up with a lot of waste. That's the one thing that always gets me right here in the heart. Is that my heart? No. right here in the heart. But again, always have a plan for your fabric scraps. I keep all of mine. I use them as stuffing. I reuse them in many different projects. So just don't ever just throw them away. All right, well, let me take a look at the pattern and start cutting it out. Okay, here's another tip for you. So one of the things, if you're ever working on a pattern and you see something that could benefit you for maybe your own self-drafting items, so I love to just keep pockets like this or trace pockets like this and just keep them in my pattern stash. That way I'm always ready to add pockets to any project that I have. So I already have a bunch of pockets already cut out, the pattern pieces. But that's just something that you could keep in mind, sourcing old patterns for just pieces like that. All right, so I have gone through and done a first pass. And now I need to double check because I did realize that they had some that were specific for different sizes. So this one is the buttonhole guide. This is actually really cool because typically, you know, when I do my self-drafted garments, I just have to measure them out. Some of them are size specific. So like this piece that I just showed you, this is made for size 12. Okay, so you don't have to have any cutting lines. You're just cutting around the solid piece. On this one, you just want to make sure that you are cutting the correct cutting line. Because there are only 3 sizes and I'm making the largest size, it's pretty simple. I'm just going around the outside. And it would be easier if I press this first, but on this one, I am going to rethink this one. Okay, so this is something I'm actually referring back to the Evelyn Wood video that I just watched. So facing. So there are 2 terms that you may hear all the time. In fact, you're going to hear them all the time if you're sewing. Interfacing and facing. So interfacing, think of that as like entering the fabric or being on the fabric. That's the way my brain remembers it. But interfacing is to make your fabric more sturdier, right? So you're going to, like this pattern does say to add some interfacing to some of the pieces. And typically that is like with where you're going to put the buttons. So if you're going to do a buttonhole on, you know, like a cotton fabric, that could be pretty weak and it could rip. The more you use it, there's not going to be a longevity, you know, a longevity of having this garment. So by adding that interfacing, you're adding strength and heft or weight, which can make the garment last a lot longer and, you know, have a more professional finish. Facing, on the other hand, that's like, how do I describe it? It's like a piece that goes to hold your seams down. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but a lot of like older garments from the 80s, and I know I had, you know, in the 90s, you would see these on the inside of your clothes. So, you know, if you put it on wrong, it'd be flipped up like this. So if you're ever thrifting and you see some like a tank top or something, you put it on and you have this little piece up here, you have to pull it down to the inside. It's super annoying because it's adding extra fabric. It doesn't lay correctly. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. So one of the things that Evelyn Wood mentioned was instead of using facing, which is what a lot of these older patterns call for, just using a matching bias facing, I think she said. What I heard and what I think I'm going to try is doing essentially bias tape. So using, or not bias tape, I guess it is bias tape, but bias binding. So using a, you know, this bias little strip to finish your edges, which gives it a really nice clean finish, and it's going to lay flat and it will, I think, look really nice. So that's the plan. So I'm not going to cut this piece out. I don't think I'm going to use facing on this. So cutting out those pieces just took me about 14 minutes. So it does take a bit of time to cut these out. But if you find a pattern that you enjoy, you can omit that from your prep process. So we ended up with, let's take a look at our total pieces. So we have our front piece. So this is going to be the front. We have our back piece. So we have front and back. We have our sleeves, so obviously, so front, back, sleeves, all of this makes sense. And then there is this extra cuff. So there are two different styles listed. There is just the standard cuff, or you can, or the standard hem on the sleeve, or you can add an optional cuff. We're gonna see if I have enough fabric. I may not have enough fabric to do a special cuff, but we can always do something else. We can customize it. And then the last piece, of course, was for the buttons. So not too many pieces. Now we're going to lay out our fabric and see if we have enough. And if not, we'll pivot. So as I'm laying out my pattern, this fabric scrap that I have is not quite big enough. So a couple of most important things that I wanted to keep in mind is this back piece right here cannot be cut on the fold because this is where it's going to button down and needs to be two separate pieces. The front bodice does need to be cut on the fold, so that will fit right here. This will fit right here. However, we still have at least, the sleeves to cut, which, will not fit out of this fabric. But honestly, I think what I'm going to do, I just looked through my fabric stash and I think I might just use this pair of black jeans that I got at the thrift store. So I've been holding on to this along with loop all of that denim that's in there for some denim projects, but I think that I can just make the sleeves out of this black denim and that will contrast nicely with this print. And then I may end up actually taking another band at the bottom just to tie it all in, or I might add a patch pocket to the front, which that would tie it all in as well. So stay tuned. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out when it comes to cutting out your patterns. So number one, when you were laying them out, there is a grain line. I didn't mention that before, but follow the arrow to go with the grain. A couple of really important things on the pattern that you should absolutely follow. Notches. Okay, so notches, you may see them on your patterns and they're little triangles like this, and you'll see them throughout in key areas. So like up at the shoulder, we have a notch. Over here on the center of the sleeve hole, we have a notch, and then down here on the side as well. Those notches, you're gonna cut them out of your fabric. Now, people do this a bunch of different ways, okay? So this really, I think, comes down to personal preference and what works for you. Some people just cut a straight line in each of the notches. I tried doing that and it tended to work okay. It's faster. Is it as accurate? I don't know. You can also, the way I was taught, is to cut out painstakingly each triangle as you go, okay, inside the fabric. I've also seen folks cut out those triangles outside. So when they get here, they just cut them out this way to line it up. That's way too much work for me. Maybe if I was doing a more tailored garment, that might make sense. So I think for this garment, we're gonna try the straight line method. It's faster, and honestly, this is such a easy make because it's just a boxy top. I think we'll be okay. So what I mean by that is, see, even here they have them marked with these little lines. So I'm just going to take my scissors and make sure you have the fabric underneath the pattern here, and I'm going to cut a straight line, and then I'm going to go to the next one and cut a straight line. Now, don't cut too far because then you're going to cut into your seam allowance and it'll be visible on the fabric. So you're just cutting these notches, these lines, just to line them up with the other pieces when you go to stitch them. So I cut out all my pieces, and the pattern, now if you're looking at the pattern, it wants you to do the facing and interfacing, all of that right now. We're not gonna do that. I typically self-draft my own top, so I'm gonna go with my own experience and see what happens. So we have, this is our front piece cut on a center fold. Okay, so this is here, and this is gonna be very cropped. So I I may end up adding something to this as well. But this is the top and these are the sides. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm going to stitch these together at the shoulder seams. Another really important piece about sewing with patterns is looking at your seam allowance. So they typically tell you on the first page what they have for a seam allowance. So this is really tiny, but it's in this top corner and it says all seam allowances are 5/8 inches unless otherwise indicated. Otherwise indicated, you know, if you needed to do a base stitch, it might tell you to, you know, do a different size. But in this case, 5/8 inches, which is pretty standard. I think most patterns like this are going to be like 5/8 inches. I may end up doing a French seam to the shoulders because we're not doing a lining. So typically when I do a top, I intentionally choose tops that I can make a lining with because it covers up so much of that work. No one's going to see the inside of your garment most likely, unless you are going to be selling a garment, right? But for me, because I want this to last, I want to have reinforced seams. So I think I'm going to do a French seam on the shoulders. Now, I'm telling you I'm going to do a French seam. I need to pull this up on the internet because I've only done French seams a couple of times. This is where math comes into play. If it's a 5/8 seam allowance, you need to stitch smaller seam allowance at first for that initial stitch, then fold it on top of itself and then stitch again at the 5/8 inches to get it inside. So I just want to confirm that number because my brain can't keep all that in there. So anyway, yeah, let's do a French seam. So I just looked it up and yes, so to do the French seam with a 5/8 inch seam allowance, we are going to start by placing our wrong sides together and then we're going to sew a narrow seam. Now it says I can do a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 inch for the first seam, and then when we fold it right sides together, then we'll do the regular the remaining seam allowance to meet the allowance. Okay, so if I'm doing a 1/4 inch, which is what I'm gonna do, since I do a lot of quilting, you know, 1/4 inch is pretty standard for me. So we'll do a 1/4 inch, and then that means that we need to do 3/8 inch to get there. All right, well, my husband just brought me a banana. I should probably eat that. So we have wrong side, wrong side, wrong side, wrong side, and then we have them pinned at the shoulders. So I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to stitch, like I mentioned, 1/4 inch, which seems very wrong, right? But that's a French seam seems very wrong, but it looks so good. So we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both of these, and then we're going to turn it like this, and then we're going to continue and stitch that 3/8 inches, and then when we turn it back and press it, we'll have gorgeous seams. All right, so before I go any further, I wanted to try on what we have so far, just to kind of make sure it's doing what I wanted it to do. So I just have it pinned here on the sides, and I don't have, obviously, the sleeves in. So the French seams turned out really nice. Oh, well, you can't see it's on the inside. I'll show you in a second. The French seams turned out really nice. The only thing I think I want to do is, because this fabric is a little thick, I think I am going to do a top stitch. I do have it pressed to the back, and it might stay down a little bit better once I get the bias facing around the neckline. And this is what the French seams look like. So everything is encased in there, it lays flat, and it is a beautiful seam finish. So I added the sleeves before I did the back or the neckline because I just wanted to make sure that these denim sleeves were going to work the way I wanted them to. And I'm glad I tried them on. I actually sewed them in place. They are great. I did wash these jeans. They were really bright, vibrant black. They still are. And then this also has like a black but kind of faded look. So over time, as this gets washed, this will fade into hopefully this lighter color here. But by putting them on, it made me realize that the style of the back that I was considering is a little too boho, a little too, I was playing around with some different designs, just kind of trying to figure out how I wanted this. So I still may go with the buttons. You know, I did the French seams in the top and I had considered doing a top stitch. I don't think I need a top stitch, but I am going to go around and do a top stitch for the sleeves in black, so you won't actually be able to see it. But you know what else I'm gonna do? I'm gonna serge the sleeves. So I have this rainbow, this rainbow thread in my serger right now. And you know, I don't wanna switch out the thread, so I just did a sample. And in fact, this is a really good tip for you. Just to make sure when it comes to sewing or even using your serger, if you're doing a test piece, just make sure you use the same weight of fabric. So I did use a piece of the denim and then a piece of this cotton together, just to make sure that everything was going to line up the way I wanted it to. And it's gonna be on the inside, no one's gonna see it except me, but I kinda like the idea of having a secret pop of color on the inside. So we're gonna do that. And after I finish those edges, we are going to sew up the sides, and then we're gonna come back to the back closure and neckline. The longer that I play with a garment, I usually end up changing something because it's really about how it feels on. So it's supposed to have these buttons in the back, right? We talked about this. However, I added the sleeves. I haven't cuffed them yet or hemmed them, but when I put it on, I mean, it feels more comfortable to have it this way. And now I just have to finish the front. So I think I'm going to cut out a little bit more of the neck here just to make it so that it fits a little bit, a little bit easier. And then still not sure about the front exactly, but we're going to play with it. But I wanted to show you again, and it's okay to change garments. That's the coolest part about making your own clothing, is that you can do whatever the heck you want. I'm still considering adding a little patch pocket to the front just to tie in these denim sleeves. We are making some progress, my friends. All right, well, it's been a long day. Lily came up to get me and say, hey, Mom, come downstairs. But anyway, here we are in our current state. If it's loud, I apologize. Again, those of you that have been here know we do not have central air, and the temperatures have been stifling up here. So anyway, this is where we are. I think it's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and I have finished the sleeves. I added a few rows of additional top stitching. I don't really need it for heft. I keep saying heft, but I think I want to say weight because this is denim, but it just gives it a different shape. I kind of like that. And then I did a bias binding. If I would have had black, I would have used black, but I only am using what I already have on hand. So this is white with a white top stitching, which I don't hate. And then the other thing that I wanted to do, I loved the length so much, but I didn't want to leave it raw because it didn't quite look finished. I wanted to include a little bit of the black down here. So I found a really tiny bias tape. So we have just this little bit of bias tape going all the way around just to tie that black from the sleeve in. So now my final decision. All the finishes are done, everything's done except our buttons. So I'm trying to decide if I want to do wood buttons or if I want to do black buttons. I think the black buttons take it very 80s and the wood buttons make it a little bit more boho. I think I'm gonna go with the wood buttons. Let me know in the comments what you would pick. If you would pick the wood buttons or if you would just pick the black buttons. Let me know. It's the end of the day. I spent all day working on this top and I've almost lost the sun because guess what? I just recorded my outro and came back and realized the camera wasn't on. You know, it happens. Just like messing up the buttonhole 3 times in a row when I'm trying to finish this project happened today. But friends, guess what? This top, was a 1988 pattern that I was able to incorporate into my aesthetic, into more of a modern look, using things that I already had around my house. A couple of the alterations I made as you were following along, I did decide I really like the buttons in the front. So I'm going to wear this primarily with the buttons in the front because I do love the way that it looks in the back when I have the buttons in the front. It kind of has this little bit of a swing to it. So when I wear my high-rise jeans, it just has a lot of body. Also, the denim on the sleeves, I wasn't sure if I liked it because it gives it this rigidity, but it gives it, this geometric shape. Right? And if I would have used a lighter cotton or a different fabric, I wouldn't have that. So sometimes using what you have on hand or getting creative can result in some of the most amazing and unique pieces. I did end up going with the wooden buttons because I felt that that was just a little bit more in line with my aesthetic as opposed to those black plastic buttons. And then, of course, I did alter the neckline and just so that I could pop it over my head so I don't even have to undo the buttons. So honestly, I probably could have omitted making buttonholes and I could have just stitched these on and had it decorative. But I do like the idea of being able to maybe, pop it on over a swimsuit top or a tank top in the middle of the summer and just have it as an overshirt. So there are lots of options. And because I've already washed this fabric, I know that it is going to hold up. It's not going to bleed, and it's going to be a piece that I have in my wardrobe for many, many years to come. So thank you so much for joining me on this random wild adventure of making this 1988 shirt today. And if you like content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, see ya!